Hi everyone, I'm Rashid, and in this short video today I'll be talking about how to write a research proposal for your master's, MPhil and PhD thesis or dissertations. As you know that supervisors or professors ask their students to submit a research proposal before they begin their project. Therefore, it's important to know how to write it, how many sections to include, and what to include in those sections of a research proposal. The word count might vary as different universities or disciplines have different requirements, but the key things will be more or less the same. So to help you write a good research proposal, I'm going to tell you the steps that you need to take and the components that you need to include in your research proposal. So let's begin with the definition of a research proposal. In this definition in the screen, you can see that I have underlined the key words and phrases to show the essential parts of the process of writing a research proposal. So a research proposal is a concise and coherent summary of your proposed research. It sets out the central issues or questions that you intend to address. It outlines the general area of study within which your research falls, referring to the current state of knowledge and any recent debates on the topic. It also demonstrates the originality of your proposed research. So research proposals should be concise and coherent. It should present the key issues or questions. It should outline the general area of your study, such as linguistics or education, etc. And it should show that your research topic is significant and original. Right, so the question is, why do we write a research proposal? So the purpose of writing a research proposal is to ensure that you have done sufficient preliminary reading. You have read about your topic. It would show that you have thought about the issues involved and you're able to provide more than a broad description of the topic which you are planning to investigate. It will show that you have critical thinking, that you're capable of independent critical thinking and analysis. You can analyze the literature that is available to you. It will also ensure that you are capable of communicating your ideas clearly. So, to submit your proposal, the key purpose is usually just to convince your supervisors. You need to convince them, and to convince them, you will have to answer certain questions. For instance, what motivates or inspires you to do this project? Where do you get the inspiration from? Is it your idea, or you got it from somewhere or someone else? Secondly, why is it important to do this project? Why not something different? And the last thing is that you need to practice and write it down in a very persuasive style so the reader or your supervisor could understand your reasons for doing the project and its significance in your field. Right, so when you write down your research proposal and while you're writing to convince your supervisors, you can mention 6 or more potential driving forces. The first driving force could be that you want to add to a body of knowledge conceptually or empirically, or you want to address a theoretical or practical problem in your field, or you want to translate a theory or practice into a new arena, or your aim is to provide evidence to guide a policy, or maybe you want to improve the existing practice or challenge an existing theory, or your purpose could be to explore a previously unconsidered dimension of perspective on theory or practice. Right? So it could be one or more, or maybe the combination of all these 6 points. Well, you might have your own reasons for doing a project. You might have your own convincing reasons, and you can mention them in your research project and your research proposal. On this slide, you can see that a research proposal mainly answers these 3 overarching questions. If you can adequately answer these questions, you can write a convincing research proposal. The first one is, what is the proposed research trying to find out? What's the problem? So identify the problem. And identification of the problem is probably the first thing in the process of your research project, or the process of writing your research project. Why is the research worth doing? And how will you do that? The last point, how, is about the methodology. How will you collect the data or analyze the data? Right? So your supervisors will look for answers to these three overarching questions, and you must explicitly include detailed answers to these questions. Right. Overall, your research proposal will have three major sections, which are the introduction, literature review, and the research design. However, these three sections will have 12 components, which you can see on the screen. A title, a description of the problem, rationale of the study, research questions, hypotheses, theoretical framework for the study, preliminary review of the literature, the design of the study, methodology, methods and tools for data collection and analysis of the data, potential outcomes, contribution to the field of knowledge, the time frame when you will be able to complete or finish chapter 1, 2, 3, etc. And the references, of course, the bibliography at the end. Right? So let's talk about the first section and the major section, basically. It's about the introduction, an introduction to your topic. This will include the research aims and objectives, which are two different things, and I'll explain them in a while. The introduction will have the rationale of your study that you will provide with evidence from literature, or justification for why the proposed research, the proposed questions are important, or you want to address them. Here you will demonstrate that the proposed research will make an original contribution to the body of knowledge, and you will add your personal reasons why this topic is important to you. You will also explain the context of the study, background of the study, and you will briefly introduce the concepts, theories, or models that will guide your research. And the last point is very important. You will include your research questions here, or the hypotheses, but remember they're tentative, they're not fixed or permanent. And finally, here, of course, you will do the literature review, and after the literature review, or after the data analysis or interpretation of the data, you might come back to the questions and hypotheses, and you might change them a little, right? So, as I told you, there's a difference between the research aims and the objectives. Your aims will show basically the depth of the topic, okay, and they state the purpose or intent of the research. The aim could be that there's a disputed area in the literature and you want to go and resolve it. There could be a neglected area and you want to explore it. And there could be a topic previously understood but requiring further investigation. And there could be a gap in the literature, in the body of knowledge, and you want to bridge that gap, and your study would definitely fill that gap, and that could be one of the aims of your research. On the other hand, the research objectives, they are the steps to achieve the aims. They specify the outcomes which contributes to your research aims. They are necessary for attaining the aims, right? So your research objectives should be specific and precise. They should be identifiable, clearly defined, and they should be tangible, observable, and measurable. Okay, so you don't need to specify how they will be met. The methodology section will do it for you. All right, so the next thing is the research questions. So the research in the introduction section, you will include the research questions and hypotheses. These questions will be there to hit the key aims of your research. Sometimes the research questions are directly derived from the research aims, or both are linked together. So the research questions should be brief, but they need to be precise, and they take a lot of practice, a lot of writing. A well-stated research question indicates what data are needed to answer it. You will probably need to keep returning to them, to revise them, to tweak them here and there. They should be a priority. They direct the design of your study, and the aim of any project is to answer these research questions. They will help determine the scope and scale of your project, right? So the second major section of your research proposal is the review of literature on your topic. Here, you will demonstrate what is already known about your research area. You will include theoretical, conceptual, and empirical literature here. You will identify gaps in the literature and show where your proposed research will fit in. Here, you will critically and analytically evaluate research in your field and provide a theoretical foundation for your research. That means you will identify theories which will inform your study, but you will have to justify them, that why they are the most important theories for your research. All right, the next and the most important section of your research proposal is the research design of your study. Here, you need to explain your methodological choices and you need to justify your choices. Here, you will talk about the overall design of your study. For instance, is it a case study design or an experimental design, or it's a narrative inquiry, etc. You will explain why your chosen tools or research methods are suitable for your research. And how will you analyze the data? Will you use any software like SPSS or NVivo, etc.? You will have to briefly talk about your sampling strategy, the number of people who will take part in your research, and their details. You need to show if there will be any ethical issues or any other practical challenges related to data collection. All needs to be explained in this section of the proposal. Right? Remember the 3 C's rule while writing your research proposal. Clear, concise, and coherent research proposal is required. Ask yourself these questions. The first one about clarity: is what you have written intelligible and clearly articulated? Does it make sense, or is it confusing? Concise: have you written your proposal in a succinct and focused manner? Is it coherent? Does your proposal link together well so that it tells the reader a short story about what you want to investigate? So these are very important questions. Remember the 3 C's rule while writing your research proposal. You might be asked to revise your proposal if your research design is not identified or justified. If there is too much substantive or descriptive information and not enough on the research design, then you might be asked to revise it. If it lacks practical details related to sampling strategy or methods, then you might be asked to revise. If it doesn't include information about ethical issues, or if you don't explain the data analysis process, then you might be asked to revise and modify your proposal. But you should not lose hope, and you should make the required changes. This is part of your learning and development. Right? So, some final tips while writing your research proposal. You need to avoid big words, jargon. You need to explain all the acronyms that are there in your proposal, for example, in the literature review section. You should avoid over-personalization and informalities. For example, the use of I, or from my perspective, I believe, I consider, I think, etc. You should make good use of a dictionary and thesaurus. You should keep paragraphs and sentences short and very much focused. It's important to use headings and subheadings where relevant. It's also important to make it visually pleasing and easy to understand and easy to read. If possible, you can use diagrams, tables, graphs, wherever you think it's appropriate. You should polish and hone your sentences and read your work out loud. If possible, use Grammarly.com for improved language structures. That's the end. Thank you very much.